Over the last several years, Netflix has created some of the biggest movies in the cultural zeitgeist. But the problem is they're on streaming only. Netflix never really puts them into theaters, with exceptions for things like All Quiet on the Western Front, which they needed to make an Oscar contender. And they should have, but that only got a limited release. Are we ever going to see wide release, big budget Netflix films? Let's talk about it. Renegade Online. So, I mean, this is the same kind of thing. So Sony can afford to take a flyer on some of these things and make some of these smaller indie films. And
I just think it's funny that it's under the
production.
TriStar banner, because that's not technically. I mean, it's Sony, but it's like we're embarrassed by this, so we're going to put it under that.
And look, here's the thing: if you're Netflix, and you're going to throw out $50 million to get a film like this, that's been in theaters, and that Sony has promoted on television, like with a marketing budget for a theatrical release, you as Netflix basically have to do nothing in terms of marketing. Mm-hmm. It's already been marketed. It's already been an event. Now it's on your streaming service, as opposed to Netflix making an original film, which they then have to pump and push. And
well, that's an interesting way to think about it. Are they actually streaming movies, and the box office is used as their giant marketing campaign? I have never thought of it that way.
Well, that's what they talk about. The theater National Association of Theatrical Owners, NATO, out there in California, not the one in Europe. They talk about that because what makes a big difference is you've got to put stuff into theaters first, because that's what their words are, eventizes that release. And so when it gets to streaming, it's already a thing, and you don't have to sell it from scratch. The theatrical release is the sales pitch for the streamer. So, and they're right. It's kind of hard to argue with the facts that when you see these things hit streaming, look at what's on Disney. When Disney just releases stuff on Disney Plus versus it was in the theater first and then they put it on Disney Plus, even if it didn't do that great in the theater, the marketing side's already done. And then it blows up on Disney Plus. Hello, Encanto. Stuff like that. So, yeah.
I'll say this about Netflix. They are highly data-driven. So when they take a movie on, they know exactly how much money they're going to make off of it. And they make a lot of decisions based on these movies. And they are firm holders to the belief that theatrical cannibalizes them, which is why you'll never see anything out of Netflix go to theaters, unless it's the Egyptian, unless it's a Netflix theater.
Unless it's something that they're licensing in.
Well, that's usually from someone else, and so
that's what I mean. A third-party licensing, and I wish that Netflix would and look, I wish they would do more of their own stuff in the theaters, because I don't think it cannibalizes them.
Well, absolutely not.
Well,
I mean, they're. I've asked
they'll do
this
a couple
for
of
years.
They'll do a couple for awards nominations.
Well, they have 3 theaters.
That qualifies them.
Yeah, that qualifies them.
Yeah, they'll do the minimum.
Yeah. If you want to watch Rebel Moon, go to the Egyptian, and you can watch Rebel Moon on the big.
This is why I wasn't surprised when Apple announced this last week here, that they're no longer putting any movies in theaters, which I think is ridiculous for them and stupid. And it's counterproductive, I think, even of the streaming services. Alan is right. That's the way they think.
Yes.
But they are so short-sighted. They don't realize what made the video and DVD boom such a big deal was that you had the access to theatrical releases on home video, right? Like that was what made them lucrative. Sure, home video, like you had your straight to video things, but let me tell you, for somebody who owned and worked in several video stores over the years, those were priced much lower than the normal. There was movies that they would throw in theaters for literally like 2 weekends just so they could say it was a theatrical release and charge you the full video price. That was how it used to be. And if they would just do that, even if it's just for a short period of time, there are a lot of people who would have loved to have gone and seen Beverly Hills Cop 4 in theaters, but they didn't get to because it was a Netflix-only movie, and a lot of people didn't see it, and because they just don't care. They're not going to watch it on Netflix, or they'll get to it when they get to it, whatever it is. But at the same time, point is, that's just one example, but yeah.
But if you look at it from Netflix standpoint, there's a huge cost that is not incurred when you don't go to theaters. For example, marketing.
Yes.
There's a massive marketing budget there. And let's also say that Netflix is the largest streaming platform. And so it can advertise itself on itself. And so there's where your advertising comes in, and and it uses the publicity machine to run things, news articles, press releases. That's how it gets it all out there. I mean, I understand what they're doing. I think it's a shame what they're doing, but I can completely understand from a business and economic standpoint, because half of what Netflix produces is crap, and you don't want to spend a lot of money marketing crap. And getting
nobody's saying they should send everything. I'm just saying it does add value to it. And I feel like
the
Oscar bait. Yeah. I mean, look, to me, if they're going to spend $200 million on making a big headline major event piece, put it in theaters for 30 days. Why not? Yeah. The idea that it's not, I mean,
what have you got to lose other than you'll probably make your marketing budget back anyway? That Alan was
going to say to Alan's point there, right? And by saying that, well, it doesn't cost them as much because they can advertise themselves, right? They can use Netflix, especially the ad-based tier of Netflix, pop-up ads on the screen. But Alan, the reality is, just like Disney, we were talking about earlier, how Disney strokes itself a check to basically license its content. When Disney, for example, if Disney runs, what did they run this year during the Super Bowl? Was it Deadpool trailer? Whatever. Like when Disney runs like a major theatrical trailer during the Super Bowl or something, or during a big ESPN broadcast, or they run it in the middle of The View or something in the middle of the day. Agatha All Along, sponsored on The View, whatever. Disney, does it effectively cost Disney to run that ad on their own channel? Not in and of itself, no. But in reality, on the balance sheet, yes, it does, and here's why. And the same thing holds true for Netflix, because that ad space that they put their own product in on ESPN, or that ad space they put their own product in on ABC, could have easily been sold to a third party for real money. So when it goes on to ESPN or when it goes on to ABC, basically that film studio, the distributor, is still writing a check for, okay, well, that ad spot was $500,000. Well, that's $500,000 out of our ad budget that we have to write to ESPN. They still do that. So there is still a cost there. So even when Netflix does it, if they're advertising their own products, my point is that if Netflix is going to spend the money for, like, again, talking about big headline stuff, $100 million, $200 million big budget movies with big stars, things like that. Like Extraction, in my opinion. That should have been in theaters. The Chris Hemsworth movie, that was amazing. That should have been on the big screen, bar none. And they could have spent $50 million. They didn't have to go crazy. They could have done some on Netflix. They could have done a lot on social media. Even if they had just made $200 million on that globally, they probably could have done at least that, or Extraction 2 or whatever. It makes it, when it goes to Netflix, even that much bigger. I don't have to book it in 4,000 screens, but put it around the country. It's like, look, it just, to me, I think it would be better for Netflix. It'd be better for the production. It'd be better for everybody.
Yeah. So they don't want one of the things that I've never understood since streaming really took off, streaming has largely just destroyed the secondary market of DVDs, VHS, Blu-ray, what have you, depending on the era.
It's done more than that, actually, but yeah.
Yeah. But part of what made people eventize the secondary markets. So when it hit DVD, you were excited. You wanted to get that DVD because there would be extra content. And I've never understood why streaming, and perhaps this would be the remedy for Netflix to let them put some things on in the theater, even though I agree with Alan, they're never going to do it. And Alan clearly has some people who've said that. But I've never understood why, like Disney, for example, why they don't do a director's cut that lands on Disney Plus now, because then you would be able to eventize it again. You would make it into a big debut, a way that you've never seen it. Imagine if there was an extra 10 minutes.
We're getting the director's cut of Rebel Moon, though, bruh.
It's not a director's cut. That's a special edition.
The worst.
Anyway,
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, honestly, Pro, I wish I knew the answer to that. For some reason, Disney has always been anti-extended cut of anything. In fact, I remember one of the first stories coming to me about people losing something on streaming was, I guess, was it Bedknobs and Broomsticks had a extended cut on the DVD, and the digital version was the same. But as soon as they came out with the HD version, which was the theatrical only, the streaming versions also switched from that from the extended cut to the theatrical cut. And I don't know why they did that, but I guess that's just been kind of like their MO lately, and they've never been a company that's ever really been good about releasing any sort of extended, unrated, director's cut, anything.
Well,
I'm even stretching to think of one besides that.
It's
that I've
so
ever
weird
heard of before.
because just think about this for a minute from the economic standpoint. You've got Deadpool and Wolverine doing what it's doing right now. Okay, let's say that they release that onto streaming in November or December, and that will make a plop onto the streaming. But what if there were an extra 10, 15 minutes of Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds? And
Actually, Once Upon a Deadpool, they tried that and it failed.
Well, but if you do that, and let's say that, so you extend the movie out another 10 to 15 minutes, you make it into a thing for streaming, then, in one of those dead periods at the theaters in March, or maybe the next year after, say, Deadpool and Wolverine returning to theaters for a limited time with the director's cut previously only seen on Disney Plus, and you get that redundancy that used to be in entertainment. They used to make so much money off of a single movie over and over.
We talked about that on the Film Thread livecast, so you can clip this and make it go viral. But we know for a fact that there are lines in the movie that were filmed and not in the movie.
I'm not surprised.
And that there is like the kid pool. The kid pool has some of the filthiest lines in the movie, and they only took one and put it in this one. And so Chris believes that that there may come a longer and harder cut of Deadpool.
Bring back the South Park title, Deadpool and Wolverine, bigger, longer uncut.
And harder. See, and I think Sean Levy even said something about there won't be an extended cut. And like I said, the closest thing I remember is when they did Once Upon a Deadpool, and that was just to test the PG-13. But on the opposite side of this is something that I have talked about many times over, and Paul Chatto brought it up to himself. We couldn't believe it during the last year when it was the 100th anniversary of Disney, and they didn't do jack shit.
Yep.
They did not. Why were we not getting
they put out Wish?
Oh yeah, they put out Wish. I wish they had actually done better, Alan, because why were we not getting at least two of the classic Disney films in theaters remastered in 4K every month?
Yep.
And you could have had at least 12 of their vault hits. See, because that to me is the one thing that they screwed up more than anything was the vault. And that's one thing I never understood about Pixar was that Lasseter was always adamant that the movies were always available, and he was the one who got away with being able to do that. But otherwise, the vault was always a set thing for like 30 some years, and it made them money because it created this idea that there was a scarcity involved in it, and it made the Disney movie special, right? It's like if you didn't go see Bambi or Pinocchio or 101 Dalmatians or Cinderella or whatever when it came out every 7 years, then you weren't going to get to see it again until 7 years later, and you weren't going to be able to buy it again for 7 years. Right? It wasn't going to be like it was going to always be around. You go to the secondary market, good luck getting it for, less than 40, 50, 60 to $100 depending on, the market at the time. And that's what they did. They created this exclusivity out of these films, but instead of keeping that exclusivity and saying, look, these are only going to be on Disney Plus for like a month or 90 days at a time. If you don't watch them now, you're not going to see them for a while. That's another thing that could be driving people, but they're not. Instead, they've got Little Mermaid right next to Little Mermaid 2 and 3. They've got Bambi right next to Bambi 2 and 3, or whatever, however many of those they got now. Cinderella, same thing. They have made the original classics worth no more or less than those straight-to-video sequels that Eisner made back in the day, because these movies are no longer exclusive. They're no longer special. We no longer have the event where we get to go see Fantasia on the big screen once every decade, right? Yeah. We don't have that anymore.
Well, from my standpoint,
sorry,
and
I want Alan to respond.
I saw yellow.
Yeah, go
ahead,
I saw.
Well, just real quick, I saw yellow flash out there saying Deadpool 3 is fine, leave it as it is. And I'm not really taking a quality position. I'm looking at this from the financial standpoint of how many times. Think of your favorite Disney movie, for example. How many times did they monetize that with just a slight tweak that allowed them to make even more money? And so that's the redundancy that was built into the industry over and over. I mean, just as recently as Frozen, they were such greedy blanks that they re-released it with the bouncing ball on the lyrics called Frozen Sing-Along in theaters. That's how good they were at remonetizing. But
that's my point, Pro, is they didn't even have to add anything to it. They just re-released the movie as it was.
Now it just sits on streaming and makes nothing.
Yeah. Exactly. No,
But
that's
yeah,
just
Alan, I didn't know how you felt about that. That was like why I was bringing that up. But yeah,
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, but
it started with the 100-year anniversary thing. Is what started the rant. If that helps.
yeah, I know. It's kind of like yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. I was hoping if I started talking, I would be able to get it back.
No,
but the thing is that is the whole cancel Walt Disney thing. I feel like the company is not proud of its past. And I think that's part of the reason why there wasn't an event, because that would have been money in the bank had you just started releasing some of the classics in theaters. But again, I mean, can you imagine if they put Dumbo back in the theater? All the outrage that they think would happen. Here's guaranteed money. Put Song of the South in the theaters. That's bank. That is.
That will never see the light of day again, especially now that Splash Mountain is gone.
I bet it makes 500 million.
Yep.
Is that real? That's got to be a bootleg.
But 35 millimeter rent
is there? They are. It's cancel Walt Disney.
The backup, Tom. There you go.
That's got to be a bootleg, huh?
Technically, but it is a 35 millimeter rip.
Okay. Yeah, it's on DVD.
It's on Blu-ray.
I've got the VHS that's authentic.
Blu-ray. Yeah, but it's like cancel Walt Disney. They are ashamed of their past, and these live actions. I have always said the live actions were a way to be able to cast aside Walt's work.
That's a good point.
And bring it back and bring it to modern audiences.
I hadn't thought of that on the live actions.
Yeah,
I thought about
I'm not surprised.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: there's only one live action that was true to the original, and that was Cinderella.
But that was made prior to them doing all this stuff. You're right.
No, that was the second. It was after Maleficent. Cinderella.
Wonder why they didn't at some point, and maybe it's just Bob Iger's ego. Wonder why they didn't do a remake of Song of the South, but leave out Song of the South part of it, leave out Uncle Remus, just do the Brer Rabbit stuff, because that was authentic African mythos that they could have just
the woke doesn't believe that era of American history exists.
And I would argue
leave that all out though. Just do the little cartoon rabbit. That's what I'm saying. Make it be African.
I would argue the first Maleficent was more of a let's do our own Wicked thing more so than what became. Because I agree with you, especially once you get into like the Little Mermaid and some other things, it's pretty blatant what they're up to. Mm-hmm. And I have thought of that before. And I mean, they've literally taken the Walt out of Disney now, right? Have you seen the new logo?